The Mexican Mafia is one of the most feared and powerful criminal organizations in the world. With its roots deep in California's prisons, its reach stretches far beyond the walls, influencing everything from local street gangs to global criminal networks. But behind its notorious reputation are individuals whose names have become synonymous with danger, power, and control. These are the members who didn't just join the Mexican Mafia, they shaped its legacy. In Part 1, we explored the rise of some of La Mi's most influential figures. But today, we go deeper. Today, we look at the top 10 most dangerous members of the Mexican Mafia, those who've made a mark in ways that few others could ever dream of. These men didn't just follow the rules of the game, they rewrote them. They controlled territories, ran operations, and played the system to their advantage. But their power didn't come easily. It was earned through loyalty, violence, and the unrelenting pursuit of dominance. Number 10. Roybal Ernest Kilroy. Roybal was a founding member of the Mexican Mafia gang. Born in Boyle Heights, California in 1939, Roybal grew up in a neighborhood heavily influenced by gang culture. At a young age, he joined the White Fence Gang, a notorious group in East Los Angeles. Although Roybal was a gifted athlete with potential in baseball and boxing, he chose a path that would lead him deep into the criminal underworld. His affiliation with White Fence marked the beginning of a life that would involve illicit activities, including the distribution of narcotics. Roybal's early encounters with the law set the stage for his future. He was arrested multiple times as a juvenile, and his involvement in crime escalated. By the 1960s, while incarcerated, he became part of the founding group of the Mexican Mafia in San Quentin prison. Roybal, known for his leadership skills and ruthlessness, quickly earned the role of shot caller, a position of immense influence within La M, where he directed operations and coordinated the gang's efforts. Throughout the 1960s and beyond, Roybal's life was a constant cycle of crime, prison, and more crime. His criminal enterprises extended far beyond prison walls, with the Mexican Mafia exerting control over various street gangs and illicit trade in narcotics. Roybal's influence within the gang was substantial, and he was deeply involved in the management of gang-related activities, including overseeing the trafficking of illicit substances, enforcing gang loyalty, and dealing with rivals. Roybal's arrest and incarceration began in the early 1950s and spanned nearly 4 decades. His crimes, including his involvement in the distribution of illicit substances, ensured that his time in prison was lengthy. Despite his violent past, Roybal's eventual turning point came after his release from Pelican Bay State Prison in 1993. At 54 years old, he chose to abandon the life of crime that had defined him for most of his life. In the years following his release, Roybal underwent a dramatic transformation. He embraced Christianity and devoted himself to ministry. Unlike many former gang members, Roybal never cooperated with law enforcement or became an informant, a rare act of defiance against the Mexican Mafia's code. Instead, he focused on helping others avoid the dangerous path he had once followed. He often visited prisons, speaking to inmates about faith and redemption. Roybal's life took another turn in 2006 when he survived a near-fatal trucking accident, which left him with permanent physical damage. Despite this, he remained dedicated to his ministry and continued to serve as a living witness to the possibility of change. Tragically, Ernest Kilroy Roybal passed away on January 7, 2021, at the age of 81. Number 8. Manuel Vasquez. Manuel Vasquez, born in Idaho, became deeply involved in the violent world of the Mexican Mafia. He was a hitman for the group, carrying out its ruthless directives without hesitation. His criminal career spanned several years and was marked by numerous acts of extreme violence, including the 1998 assassination of 51-year-old Juanita Ibarra. Ibarra, a woman operating in the narcotic trade in San Antonio, failed to comply with the Mexican Mafia's dime. the 10% tax the gang imposed on illegal substance sales. This act of defiance led to her execution. Vasquez, along with 2 accomplices, stormed into Ibarra's motel room in the early hours of March 19, 1998. The trio, wearing bandanas and socks on their hands to avoid leaving fingerprints, assaulted Ibarra and her boyfriend, Moses Bazan. Vasquez, acting on orders from the Mexican Mafia's leadership, strangled Ibarra with a phone cord while the others ransacked the room for valuables. Bazan, despite being severely injured, survived and identified Vasquez as one of the attackers, leading to his arrest and conviction. This brutal act was one of several linked to the Mexican Mafia's control over the narcotic trade in Texas. Vasquez, already with a history of violence and previous prison time for offenses like aggravated assault and attempted manslaughter, had proven himself a loyal enforcer of the gang's will. His role in Ibarra's demise was seen as a chilling example of how the Mafia maintained dominance over those who refused to pay the tax. Vasquez's criminal history, coupled with his involvement in the termination of Ibarra, led to his indictment for capital manslaughter. During his trial, evidence revealed that the assassination was ordered by Mexican Mafia boss René Munoz, further cementing Vasquez's position within the organization. His accomplices, Johnny Joe Cruz and Olegario Lujan, were sentenced to lesser terms for their roles, with Cruz receiving a plea deal in exchange for his testimony against Vasquez. In late 1999, Vasquez was sentenced to death for his involvement in the assassination. Over the years, his defense team filed numerous appeals, arguing ineffective counsel and requesting new evidence to exonerate him. However, these efforts were unsuccessful, and his conviction stood. Vasquez spent over 16 years on death row before his execution on March 11, 2015, at the age of 46. In his final moments, he expressed his gratitude for life, thanking the Lord and telling his family he loved them. The execution was carried out via lethal injection, and he was pronounced dead 17 minutes later. Number 7. Adolf José Champ Reynoso was born on August 21, 1943, in Denver, Colorado. Raised in Los Angeles, he was part of a large family, the oldest of 7 siblings. He grew up in East LA, where he became deeply involved in the street gang culture, joining Big Hazard, a gang that was prominent in the area. Over time, Reynoso's criminal activities escalated, and he eventually became affiliated with the Mexican Mafia gang. Reynoso's rise within the Mexican Mafia was an evidence to his ruthlessness and ability to navigate the complex gang networks that spanned both the streets and the prisons. In the 1970s, he became entrenched in the inner workings of the Mexican Mafia while incarcerated. By the early 1990s, Reynoso was identified as a key player in the organization's operations, one of its most influential members. His leadership was marked by his involvement in a vast network that taxed local illicit substance dealers, exerting control over the barrios of Southern California and generating significant revenue for the Mafia. In 1995, Reynoso was one of the 22 members of the Mexican Mafia indicted in the first major federal RICO case against the gang. The indictment, which stemmed from a wide-ranging investigation, revealed the full extent of the Mafia's operations, including its reliance on street gang members to enforce its control over narcotic trade routes and distribution networks. The case relied heavily on the testimony of Ernie Chuco Castro, a former high-ranking member, who provided critical details about the Mafia's illegal activities. Despite his conviction in the 1995 RICO case, Reynoso's influence did not wane. Even from behind bars, he continued to hold power, especially in the federal Supermax prison in Florence, Colorado, where he was incarcerated later in life. At this time, Reynoso was considered one of the highest-ranking active members of the Mexican Mafia. He maintained a tight control over the prison's operations, commanding respect from fellow inmates and associates alike. But Reynoso's life came to an end on November 21, 2018, at the age of 75 in Colorado, where he had spent his final years incarcerated. He passed away in a hospital near the federal maximum security prison, where he had been held for many years. Number 6. Frank Marquez. Frank Bosco. Marquez, a name synonymous with danger and influence, was deeply embedded in the operations of the Mexican Mafia. Affiliated with the Barrio Norwalk street gang, Marquez was not just a member, but an important associate who played a significant role within the organization. His story is intertwined with a web of illicit activities, from orchestrating operations within the jail system to influencing events on the streets. He rose through the ranks, gaining the trust of higher-ups within the Mexican Mafia, including members like Luis Pelon Masiel. In 1996, Marquez became a central figure in a large-scale investigation, which involved a wiretap operation targeting the Mexican Mafia's communications. This surveillance operation uncovered a range of criminal activities, from the distribution of illicit substances to orchestrating violent acts. The wiretap intercepted countless calls where Marquez and other Mafia associates, including Ana Banana Reed, communicated with gang members both inside and outside the prison system. These calls were critical in organizing and executing the criminal activities that Marquez was deeply involved in. In fact, Marquez was a key figure in maintaining the network that allowed the Mexican Mafia to continue its operations even behind bars. One of the major revelations of the wiretap was the use of the court system to smuggle illicit substances into the jails. Inmates, including Marquez, used court-ordered civilian clothing to conceal these substances, which were later retrieved and passed through various channels within the jail. Marquez was known for maintaining contact with individuals on the outside, including using burnout phones and three-way connections to ensure communication remained uninterrupted. His role as an intermediary between incarcerated Mafia members and those outside made him a vital cog in the Mexican Mafia's operations. However, Marquez's criminal empire began to crumble when law enforcement, armed with the evidence gathered from the wiretap operation, moved in. In the end, Marquez was indicted, and he faced multiple charges. He was convicted and sentenced to a lengthy prison term, and he became one of the most significant figures taken down in that case. His capture, along with that of many other gang members, marked a turning point in the battle against gang influence in California jails. Today, Marquez is no longer the free man he once was. He remains incarcerated, serving out the consequences of his involvement in the dangerous world of gang leadership. Number 5. Samuel Negro Vialba. Samuel Negro Vialba, once a feared member of the Mexican Mafia, lived a life marked by violence, power, and eventual downfall. Born and raised in southeast Los Angeles, Vialba's journey into the criminal world began in the mid-1980s. While serving time in Folsom Prison, he was inducted into the Mexican Mafia. This membership was not just a badge of honor, but a ticket to influence and power that stretched far beyond the prison walls. Upon his release in the late 1980s, Vialba quickly became a key player in the Mafia's push to consolidate control over street gangs in the region. His influence was vast, requiring local gangs to pay taxes to the Mexican Mafia. Refusal to comply led to brutal retaliation, either a green light in the streets or violence behind bars. Vialba's life was not solely defined by his criminal acts. He also built a personal life. Despite his violent affiliations, he married Pearl, a woman he met after his release, and they raised children together. However, the demands of his criminal life soon took a toll. He faced multiple disputes with younger members of his own gang, most notably the sons of one of the Mafia's founders, Luis "Huero" Flores. These tensions escalated when Vialba was accused of defying the Mafia's strict rules, a move that put his life in jeopardy. In the 1990s, Vialba became embroiled in a major federal racketeering case. Federal authorities charged him with orchestrating violent acts against members who had fallen out of favor with the Mafia. After months of evading capture, He was eventually arrested and convicted in 1996, serving a 16-year sentence. During his time in prison, his reputation remained intact, and he was known to exercise control over various gangs from behind bars. However, his behavior, particularly an assault on a fellow member without the Mafia's approval, led to his expulsion from the organization. This betrayal was met with dire consequences. While serving time in Victorville Federal Penitentiary, Vialba was attacked by fellow inmates in an attempt to exact retribution. Though he survived this brutal assault, it marked the beginning of his descent. Upon release in 2012, Vialba, now a shadow of his former self, struggled with health issues, including cirrhosis of the liver. He spent his final years living in a homeless encampment along the 91 freeway in Long Beach, where he would eventually meet his end. On January 10, 2021, Vialba's life came to a tragic close when two individuals approached his tent in the dead of night. They executed a calculated attack, ending his life in a ruthless act of retribution linked to his former gang affiliations. Long Beach police arrested one of the suspects, Andrew Reyna, who denied the charges. Number 4. Martinez Mariano. Mariano Chuy. Martinez was a notorious leader within the Mexican Mafia. A man of imposing presence with a shaved head and large mustache, Martinez was considered one of the highest-ranking members of La MA in the Los Angeles area. His reign was marked by a brutal and calculated approach to maintaining power and control over a wide network of street gangs and illicit activities, particularly narcotic trafficking and extortion. Martinez's journey through the criminal underworld began in the streets of Los Angeles, where he became deeply entrenched in the gang culture. As a trusted member of La MA, he quickly rose through the ranks, gaining a reputation for his ruthless tactics and strategic mind. Martinez was a key player in the Mexican Mafia's extortion operations, which involved collecting a tax from local gangs in exchange for protection. Those who failed to comply or challenged his authority found themselves targeted for severe retribution. Martinez's most infamous involvement came in the 1998 Montebello assassinations, a series of violent events orchestrated by him to eliminate rivals and maintain his gang's dominance. Martinez's role in these manslaughter was confirmed through wiretaps, where he was heard issuing orders to his subordinates. His involvement in this bloodshed was not limited to the Montebello assassinations. Prosecutors also accused him of ordering the termination of at least 10 others who defied his orders or crossed him. In 2001, after a lengthy investigation, Martinez was arrested and indicted on numerous charges, including racketeering, conspiracy to manslaughter, and narcotic-related crimes. The case against him was one of the most significant in the history of federal prosecutions in Los Angeles, and it marked the first time in over 50 years that the death penalty was sought in a federal court for a gang-related crime. The prosecution painted Martinez as a manipulative and violent figure, capable of commanding a network of criminals, both inside and outside of prison. Despite his lawyers' efforts to defend him, including claims of self-defense and accusations of lies from his co-defendants, the jury convicted him on 24 of 25 counts, including conspiracy to manslaughter and racketeering. Martinez's sentence was a matter of great legal debate. The jury deliberated for over a month, and in February 2001, they began the sentencing phase of his trial, deciding whether he should face the death penalty or spend life in prison. He was ultimately sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Although details surrounding his later life are not widely publicized, it is believed that Mariano Martinez died in 2014, likely while incarcerated. Though the specific circumstances surrounding his demise remains unclear. Number 3. Blos Art. Art Blos, a once feared figure within the Mexican Mafia, known for his ruthlessness and association with violent crimes, now stands as a symbol of redemption. Born and raised in Boyle Heights, Los Angeles, Blos became embroiled in a life of crime at a young age. By the time he was 19, he was deeply entrenched in the Mexican Mafia. His reputation as an enforcer and hitman spread quickly, and he was feared in the criminal underworld. His actions in prison, particularly his role in carrying out the gang's violent orders, cemented his place as a respected yet dangerous figure within the Mafia. Blos's early years were marked by bloodshed. At his early age, he had already crossed a point of no return, committing violent acts that would haunt him for the rest of his life. One of the most chilling accounts of his criminal past is of him taking the life of another individual while incarcerated. He later recounted that moment as the one where he lost his humanity, unable to feel the weight of his actions anymore. Throughout his time in and out of prisons, Blos rose through the ranks of the Mafia, carrying out tasks that many would consider unthinkable. He became a trusted member, feared for his loyalty and efficiency in carrying out the gang's most dangerous operations. Blos's life was marked by long stints in prisons like San Quentin, where he spent over 17 years, and where he was even placed on death row. But despite the harsh conditions, he never faltered in his commitment to the Mafia. His crimes were numerous, spanning from robberies to the illicit trade of substances. The violence, the narcotic deals, and the constant threat of retribution kept him in the Mafia's grasp for most of his life. However, a pivotal moment came during one of his prison sentences, when Blos found himself in a cell next to a man named Eddie, someone who had once been a strong advocate of Christianity, but had fallen back into addiction. Blos, who had always seen the world through the lens of gang loyalty, was supposed to carry out a final order on Eddie's life. But as the two shared their experiences, Eddie spoke to Blos about redemption and the power of forgiveness. Something within Blos shifted. The man who had once felt nothing as he took others' lives now saw Eddie as a fellow human being, not an enemy. This moment of compassion marked a dramatic turning point. Blos later left behind his life in the Mafia and turned to faith, joining Victory Outreach, a Christian organization focused on rehabilitating former gang members. His story became one of the most remarkable transformations, earning him a reputation not just for his past as a feared figure, but for his work helping others turn their lives around. Today, Blos resides in South Wales, where he runs a home for young men trying to escape the destructive grip of addiction and crime. Number 2. Ramon Mendoza. Ramon Mundo. Mendoza, born in 1949 in Los Angeles, grew up in the heart of East LA, an area steeped in gang culture. From an early age, he was influenced by the harsh realities around him. His stepfather's words, "If you're going to do something, do it right," resonated with him, shaping a mindset that would lead him into a life of crime. His early years saw him in and out of juvenile facilities, where he joined the tinies clique of the Barrio Nuevo Estrada gang. His ability to navigate the violent street life earned him respect and paved the way for his eventual induction into La M, the Mexican Mafia, during the early 1970s at San Quentin State Prison. Mendoza's rise within the ranks of La M was swift. As a member, Mendoza became a key figure in the gang's operations, known for his ruthlessness and loyalty. His involvement with La M was marked by a string of violent actions, securing his place as one of the most feared individuals within the organization. He became deeply embedded in the world of the Mafia, navigating the complex network of power, control, and violence that defined the gang's operations. However, Mendoza's life took an unexpected turn. While incarcerated at the Kern County Jail, he was exposed to Christian ministries that visited the inmates. At first, he paid little attention, but eventually, he began listening to the testimonies of men who had turned their lives around. A specific passage from the Bible, Genesis 6:3, caught his attention. "My spirit shall not always strive with man." This moment sparked a profound transformation within him. In the solitude of his cell, Mendoza began to grapple with his past actions. For the first time, he sought forgiveness for the pain and harm he had caused. This marked the beginning of his journey away from the violent life he had known. Mendoza's transformation shocked both law enforcement and his former comrades in La Ime. Unlike many who turn on their fellow gang members due to fear or external pressure, Mendoza's decision was rooted in a genuine desire for redemption. He began working with law enforcement, providing invaluable information about the Mexican Mafia's inner workings. His cooperation led to the dismantling of several parts of the organization, earning him the status of an informant. This decision made him a target in both the criminal world and law enforcement, but Mendoza remained steadfast in his commitment to atone for his past. His arrest and sentencing followed a lifetime of violent actions. Number 1. Luis Masiel. Luis Masiel, a key figure within the Mexican Mafia, is infamous for his involvement in one of the most horrific gang-related incidents in California's history. Born in El Monte, California, Masiel became entangled with the Mexican Mafia. Masiel's role within the Mafia was marked by his willingness to carry out violent orders to maintain the gang's power and enforce its code. In 1995, Masiel's involvement in a brutal series of events led to the demise of 5 individuals in El Monte, including a 6-month-old child. The assassinations occurred on April 22, 1995, when Anthony Moreno, a former member of the Mexican Mafia, was targeted for his decision to leave the gang years earlier, a serious violation of the Mafia's rules. The Mexican Mafia had a strict policy: once a member, always a member. Those who dropped out were often seen as a threat, and they were subjected to severe punishment. Masiel, who was attending a family event at the time, orchestrated the attack on Moreno and his family. He enlisted the help of local gang members from the San Gabriel Valley to carry out the assassinations. The plan was executed with chilling precision. The victims were shot at point-blank range, including Anthony Moreno, his sister Maria, her 2 children, and Gustavo Aguirre. A 6-year-old child managed to survive by hiding under debris, but the massacre left an indelible mark on the community. Masiel's role was pivotal in the execution of the attack. He recruited the individuals who carried out the assassinations, and his involvement in the planning and organization of the crime was clear. The Mexican Mafia had not ordered the manslaughter of the children, a violation of its policy, but Masiel's loyalty to the gang and his commitment to enforcing its rules led him to disregard this protocol. In 1997, Masiel was indicted and, along with his co-defendants, was sentenced to death for his role in the assassinations. Despite appeals, his conviction and death sentence were upheld by the California Supreme Court in 2000. The court found sufficient evidence to support the charges, and the death sentence was deemed appropriate due to the brutal nature of the crime and the gang-related context. Masiel's appeal to overturn the death sentence has not been successful, and he remains on death row. And today he is currently on San Quentin's death row, still incarcerated.